Vice President Bharrat Jagdeo responds to question at his recently concluded press conference. Here is more from that press release.
Mr. Jagdeo, Dennis Shabal, Demarawi. Sir, first of all, can you say what is the status of the CGX license, or whether government will grant an extension of the appraisal?
The president is out, so I told you that the cabinet engaged on the matter. The questions asked of CGX were the answers given to the questions asked by CGX were not satisfactory to the cabinet. Cabinet is not inclined to grant an extension to the license. However, they will return. They took no definitive position. The discussion took place, and the matter, they've asked some additional information. And so that matter will be concluded at some point in time, but right now, I told you about the inclination of the cabinet. It's not inclined to give any extension, but it wants some additional information.
What's that additional information you're looking at, and why not the inclination to extend?
Because they did not give satisfactory answers to the questions asked, posed by the minister. And that dealt with the ability to finance any future operations and a partner that is of the standing and has the capacity, both financial and otherwise, to implement a project in the future. But those are just two of the questions that were asked of them.
Okay.
That they did not give satisfactory answers.
Has government set itself a deadline by which it will make a definitive
No,
decision?
it's right now they don't have a license. Right now they don't have a license. So there is no pressure on the government to address this matter. The government has already asked them to supply all of the information, the seismic information and everything else that they should deposit with the GGMC on all of their activities offshore.
In the absence of a license, you can extend the period for appraisal, is that true?
Yes, but so if there was a favorable decision, the mechanism would have been found.
My second question is, can you confirm that you're traveling to the U.S. very soon, and for what reason?
Yeah, I'm traveling to the U.S. for government business and other business.
How soon?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Yes.
And will government business include Exxon Bank related matters? And as I'm in that point, what's the status of the loan application?
So the latest was that they're hoping to catch a board meeting that it had gone through. It was published for 30 days, and once they had received all the comments for the 30 days, then they would move forward. I don't know really if the 30 days have expired as yet. It may have expired, it may not have expired. So I have to check the details on that. But you can get that from Minister Ashney Singh.
What's the government business you're going on? What's the government business you're going on?
Oh, I can't be telling you that.
Quickly, sir, what stage is government plans to reintroduce a railway system?
So we have studied various alternatives since I was president. We looked at the possibility of a rail link connecting us with Brazil, but mainly for cargo freight, along with a road, a fiber optic cable, and also transmission main. So that is still going to be studied in the context of the the port development connecting with northern Brazil that we had a discussion with Lula on. And then we had looked at another alternative that is between Haslington, Golden Grove on the East Coast to Diamond. That is a possibility because a huge number of people live in this area. Georgetown going up to Diamond, a significant amount of our population, maybe 350,000 people. So it's a dense concentration. So the possibility of a light railway there. So that we will come back to that, and then we looked at a tram system in the city. So we're still, once you have cheap electricity, then you can go with the tram system to move people around. But that's not on the card right away now, but we still have those plans maybe for future development.
The coastal railway idea is also on the back burner.
No, but this was the area that we studied.
I know, but
right. We are developing now the road links. So at this point in time, there is no coastal railway connecting the entire coast from Parika all the way to maybe Molson Creek at this stage. We were looking at that part, the densely populated areas.
If I can press you, sir, on that, why have you apparently put it in the back burner when the more roads you build, is the more congested the place gets over a very short period of time?
But also you have to look at people's proclivity. Everyone is owning a vehicle, and in a few years' time, most of our people will own their homes, their own vehicles, etc. Unless you start penalizing the use of vehicles by Norton wants it already removing the subsidy, the $500 subsidy on fuel. So then you may be able to force people to do that. But it's more convenient to use vehicles now. That's why we put it on the back burner. We can't do everything at once. We'd have to we have to study it carefully, and also the demand for it. The demand is a crucial thing. You have to look at who will use it, the convenience of using it, all of these issues.
My penultimate question, sir.
But it is something, when I say back burner, it's not as though we have discounted it totally. It's just we have to keep studying these issues to make sure that at some stage, maybe when we may have to have some public transportation back again when you have congestion in the future, but it's not an immediate thing.
Going back to the 1970s or thereabout, when the government had taken over possession, government had taken control of the education system, a number of schools that had been located in lands owned by churches and other religious organizations had, of course, that still remains. Does government plan at any near point in the future to pay at market value to the churches the value for the lands and take over the lands?
Take over government church lands?
Essentially, on which the government schools are still housed, are still located rather.
This has to be, there is no across the board thing. I think this has to be worked out between the particular church and the ministry. This has to be worked out between the particular church and the Ministry of Education. But I can't say across the board that we will take over church land. In fact, we are trying to minimize the use of church land, but there have been, historically, some schools are already on church land.
Built schools on existing
Yes,
church lands.
so that's why I said that, where on those rare occasions where we did, it would have to be a negotiation between the church and the ministry. They should get together.
As you in a response to an earlier question, is your visit to the United States having anything to do with the recent decision by the Treasury Department against the Mohammeds?
No, nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with the Treasury Department and the Mohammeds.
Dr. Jagdeo, Milton Granum for Oil Now. Other than the low carbon development strategy and other measures already in place to climate-proof Guyana, does the government plan to put any other measures in place to climate-proof Guyana?
So we have to step up our plans for the integrated water management strategy. And we have the draft terms of reference and a draft strategy already. So that is another area that is crucial, where we look at water for navigation, we look at water for drinking purposes, potable water, water for like irrigation. These are the blue economy. So that is offshore, not inland waters. All of these in a combined water strategy, looking at water tables and stuff like that. So that's another area of focus, to have an integrated strategy and management of all of our water resources. Because although we're land of many waters, we have to be careful that you don't have saline intrusion or an overuse of water from the reservoirs, that is the water table. So we have to make sure that we manage that thoroughly. The second area is a focus on biodiversity protection and therefore an expansion of the protected areas, but in a different model. So we are looking now at legislative changes to give the cover for an expanded protected area system, but that will not maybe see the same levels of protection as some of the parks that we have, but could protect crucial areas that are isolated. For example, a watershed, a crucial watershed might be protected. You may allow some types of activities still in the protected area, but protect, say, the rare fish, rare flora and fauna. So we're looking at that too, and that would be another area of focus. So we have looked at the carbon and ecosystem services. We're looking at adaptation. We're now going to expand the look at integrated water management and also biodiversity protection. These are four areas for enhanced focus.
And is any consideration being given to things like climate resilient construction, considering the booming construction industry in Guyana?
The key thing is that given that we're outside of the hurricane zone, our key vulnerability is flooding. And so even in the construction, they talk about raising the homes a bit higher. However, we are developing a capacity to be able to address larger volumes of water faster because the intensity of rainfall has changed. Our storage areas are being reduced because as we widen roads, you have less storage sometimes. Therefore, our capacity to pump the water out, not wait on gravity flow, has to increase. And that's why the 19 pump stations with 39 installed pumps, 40 mobile pumps that we can move around the country quickly in cases where you have intense rainfall in particular regions. Then the 60 new cokers, the Hope-like canals in several regions, all of this would be, I spoke of earlier, not only have an impact on the cultivation areas, but also on dwelling areas like our villages and the city and other areas.
Okay. And you have indicated some time back that talks are underway for the government to sell its certified carbon in a Singapore-based compliance market. Can you update us on how far those talks are?
Well, these are ongoing. These things don't happen overnight, so we're still examining to sell.
Okay, and the last, well, second to last.
No
Is
problem.
Exxon still not positively inclined to purchase Guyana's carbon credits?
No, they're not inclined to purchase it, and I've been critical of this at the last meeting. I don't think they're doing enough in Guyana on the climate side. Also, the Chinese company, Hess has a great deal that we've had with Hess, but the two other co-ventures are not doing enough on the climate.
Okay, and my last question. Some countries have taken the step to regulate the type of fuel they use at their airports. Canada, Germany, and one airlines also embarked to use sustainable aviation fluid to aid in their fight against climate change. Does Guyana plan to implement any new strategies or maybe go down the same road soon?
The key thing is that if you look at some of those countries, it's almost a fraction of their flights are using the so-called sustainable airline fuel. It's not widespread. And those countries you call, they have a larger carbon footprint than countries like Guyana, and significantly larger. So I don't think there is a need for us to do this at this point in time. Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, Nasu William, Skytree News. Firstly, can you say if there are any developments to recover the money the auditors discovered Exxon spent in the Kaieteur and Kanji blocks?
What? I didn't get that one. You said again?
Can you say if there are any developments in recovering monies Exxon would have spent from the Stabroek block revenue to the works in Kaieteur and Kanji?
So the last time you said that the minister is not doesn't want to answer some of your questions. So he will have a press conference on Wednesday coming, I think the following Wednesday. So all of these routine things that are not policy based, you can find out there.
Can you update us on when the Petroleum Commission will be in place?
I've dealt with that question already 100 times. Yeah.
Finally, sir, we recall your statements that the coalition government sold out are all patrimony when they signed the lopsided contract with Exxon, which is a form of slavery. And citizens are currently feeling the impact of this slave deal. Do you plan as an ex-president, now vice president, to help to basically free Guyanese from this slave deal that the coalition would have signed us up onto?
What slave? What you said? So I can't.
We recall
can
your
you read
statements that the coalition government sold out our patrimony when they signed the lopsided contract with Exxon. The citizens are also at present feeling the impacts of this, air quotes, slave deal. Do you
Who
plan?
said it? Who is the quote from the slave bit? Who is the quote from this?
It would have been comments from civil society.
From civil society. Oh, not Glenn Lal.
No, not this time.
All right, okay.
Do you plan
Civil is
as
slave
an
contract,
ex-president?
Because that's precisely what I wanted to get, that I didn't say slave contract. So it came from civil society. Now, we have a consistent position throughout. We have never changed our position in opposition and in government. When the contract was signed, we complained about the lack of transparency. I, in opposition, pointed out that we believe the contract was lopsided, and I listed at least 5 areas where I felt that the government should have done better. I just didn't like this opposition here would just comment generally about things. I listed 5 areas, including the lack of ring fencing, the royalty rate, the share that's going to cost recovery, a number of things. The part about the decommissioning funds, all of these I commented on. These were reasons I said we believe that the contract was lopsided. I was asked whether we will renegotiate the Stabroek contract before the elections. My answer was no. Before the elections. And I outlined then why, as I've done until now. We haven't changed our positions. Throughout, I could have easily, conveniently done like AFC, who signed the contract now say, yeah, renegotiate, because they just don't have solid positions. I knew we were going to be in government, and I explained why, and I've done so several times. Again, and the logic of it, about the need to get the investments now. We've already locked in about $60 billion of investments, 6 projects that will produce, where we'll produce 1.3 to 1.5 million barrels of oil per day. When other countries are struggling now to get any financing for their projects, and on top of that, there's an added worry that net zero and the move to introduce renewable at scale will have these reserves, the reserves that they have already proven, leave them stranded. I've explained all of this then and now, and why we could not get into a dispute at that stage and slow down the momentum. We're now a party that doesn't explain its decisions and the reasoning behind the decisions. We made it clear. We also said, however, that we're going to do the following thing, that any contract that outside of the Stabroek contract, which was signed in 2016, that would have to comply to new terms or new conditions in a new PSA that we will draft. We said that Exxon, although they were part owners and operators of the Kaichor and Kanchi blocks, that in those 2 cases, the Stabroek PSA conditions would not apply. They would have to, if they developed the Kanchi project and the Kaichor project, those would have to fall under the conditions of the new PSA. We drafted a new PSA. We moved we reduced the size of the blocks smaller to ensure that there was no need for ring fencing because of large areas. 2, we reduced the cost recovery from 75% to 65%. We increased the tax, the corporate tax, from 0 to 10%, and we increased the royalty from 2% to 10%. Those are the fiscal terms. We said in the new law that we passed, the Petroleum Activities Bill, that the decommissioning funds must be placed in a separate account and not be kept by the companies. We put that in our new permit, that the last permit for the last project that we approve will have a separate fund created, and the decommissioning funds will all be paid into that and held there. Almost every criticism that we made of the contract in the 2017 period, we have sought to fix through the PSA. On the environmental side, we are even, apart from the insurance and the guarantee, the parent guarantee, we're now passing new legislation to ensure that the full liabilities are borne by, for any spill, are borne by the companies involved, including the cost of cleaning up the spill as well as economic damages. So we have remained consistent throughout. We don't waver all the time. I'm talking about from 2015. We're in opposition. It was easy to be convenient like Trotman and say, oh, we'll renegotiate. We wouldn't renegotiate, etc. We'll support the government to renegotiate. That's all they're saying. And I don't even know what Nigel Hughes is saying because he's working for Exxon. And all of that, nobody focuses on that. The obscenity of him working for Exxon, and his party is in Parliament now voting on bills that have impact on the management of the sector. And I think all of this big nonsense that Patterson is asking these questions, will Jagdeo supply, why they increase the capacity, all of that information would be provided in the Parliament whenever the question comes up. But it is a cover for Nigel Hughes' obscenity, which is he's on Exxon's payroll. So this fiend level of activism and interest is to give a cover to someone there. Now imagine, and I forgot to make this point, Patterson and Ramjatan are criticizing the chair of the Public Procurement Commission. Now I know Patterson, I know Ramjatan, and I know of the chair of the PPC. And the entire AFC combined, all their leaders, Cathy Hughes, Ramjatan, Nigel Hughes, Patterson, and all the others, if you combine their integrity, they can't come up to half of the chair's integrity who is chairing the chair of the PPC. They have absolutely no integrity. They're complaining that she's misinterpreting her role. And it's so obscene that they have an executive member of their party who sits on the PPC. How can you get a member? She must be leaking all the information that goes to the leadership of the AFC. She's an executive member and sits on the PPC, and they talk about impartiality. They couldn't find a word. The media is hopeless sometimes. They don't ask about this. How come you talk about the chair and you have a member of your party leadership who sits on the PPC now? And so this is the sort of thing. We never change our position. They change their position every week. It's a new position they have. We have made it clear. It's consistent because we look at the long run. We look at the long run. We made it, everything we said we have done, we will do, we are doing in our manifesto. And we're taking this industry seriously. You think we could operate like Glenn Lal or one of the others? By the way, I saw something last week. So I called Edge Hill and I said, don't be too harsh because this gentleman was just pointing out what's happening to the Parika Road. So it was a video done by an individual saying, I'm walking down the Parika Road and this road was fixed 5 times in the last several years, and look at the state of the road. So I didn't know who the individual, I thought was a regular citizen. So I said, you have a duty as minister to look at this if it's true, and let's get down and sort it out. So Edgel called me and he said, oh, that's not true. The road was fixed a long time back and the region patched the road up a bit. And we've already awarded, in any case, for the contract for the road to redo the entire road at Parika. So then I realized that it was another PPP hater, Gina Rahman, an old scamp, baby, who, and guess who is circulating it? Glenn Lal. And it's a narrow group. It's the TIGI, it's the Gina Rahman, it is the GHRA. It's the same group of fossils who every week, I thought it was a genuine thing. I'm responding to it in a genuine manner and didn't know that this guy was lying. He's a politician because the way he spoke on the video was believable. Oh, the road was done 10 times. That is what they do all the time, mislead people every single day. So knowing that coming from, and you would see it from the Kaichor News too. Anyhow, that wasn't the newspaper. That was in one of his TikTok, I think, TikTok videos. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So look out for this. All of they'll just come out of their woodwork now, one by one. Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, Selena Natu with Kaichor News. Has the Central Committee or Executive Committee of the PPP discussed the situation in Gaza? And if so, what is the party's position and how does it differ from the government's stance?
So both the party and the government, we believe what's happening in Gaza is a genocide unfolding. We share the views of many countries in the world that this is that this is genocide, and we support the recent ruling of the ICJ. And we believe that when South Africa's substantive case is heard, that they will conclude that what was taking place in Gaza was genocide. It may be too late because of what's happening to the people there. So you can't get any stronger than that. Secondly, we have called for an end to the war. Well, it's more like, it's not so much of a war, it's a one-sided affair, the bombardment, the killing of innocent people, the starving of innocent people in Gaza. And we have also called for a two-state solution. We believe that the people of Israel, that they have a right to live in a country called Israel, in peace and with security of their borders, and we believe that the people of the Palestinian people, they too have a right to an independent state and can live in a dignified way in their own country in peace and security. And that's why we have always been proponents of the two-state solution. We have always supported all the UN resolutions calling for the two-state solution. So that is our position.
Okay, another question. Regarding the current situation, as you said, there is mass genocide going on, and several governments have since cut ties with Israel due to this. Does the Guyanese government intend to follow suit?
Yeah, you would find that few governments have done that, and including many Arab states have not done this. So I think it's something that the government will have to consider, but I don't see it on the card now.
Dr. Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez for Daybreak News. Just for clarity, you were asked about your visit to America, upcoming visit, and you're unable to give the details of what that visit would be. Given the manipulation of the news media in this country and the importance of the role you play in the development of this country. Just for clarity, is it government's business or political business, and does it have to do with the development of Guyana? Simple. Does it have to
It
do with
has to do
development
with
in
the
general?
development of Guyana. That's it.
Government
It's
business or political business?
Government business.
Roger that.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice President. Kimal King for Oil Now. Could you talk about the model that you're exploring for the deep water port that the government wants to pursue?
So there are several proposals now that we have received, and these would all have to be stacked against one another, and we'd have to assess which is the best proposal. And whether the proposed developers have the expertise to implement the project, and they have the financial capacity to do so. So there are several proposals there that we have received over time, and these are all being examined. The developer, our own view, based on what we have found for the past 3 years, meeting with hundreds of people and all sorts of studies, that we believe that the best model should be a causeway model going out right into the deep that would allow the largest vessels in the world to come here. And that would be, in the long run, the most sustainable thing to do, because you'd avoid a lot of the dredging costs and everything else. So it might be a bit more costly at the beginning, but the operating costs would plunge significantly, and it would also allow us to bring in the largest vessel in the world. So we are inclined to go down that route, but of course, if a developer comes up with a model that is sustainable, that could be done in a different way, we're open to that.
Okay, I'm trying to get an understanding of what specifically the government hopes to achieve with this port, and therefore, what lens are you evaluating proposals through? As well as, just one more, what do you see as like a cost range for the port?
I don't want to venture that, because this has to be an integrated project. It has to be the port, a road to northern Brazil, a possibility of maybe a transmission main, maybe the sale of electricity, if we have large quantities of electricity from the project that we're hoping to develop next, which is the gas project. So it's an integrated project. It will, part of the revenue stream to make this project sustainable has to be the integration with Brazil and the business in and out of Brazil. Because on its own, we may not be able to generate enough of a revenue stream to pay back the capital cost and to give a state of a decent rate of return to the equity investor. So that is why that revenue stream, which will come from goods going into Brazil, and that's a use of the port for goods going into Brazil and goods coming out of Brazil, will help to justify this cost. Now, a port of that nature will seriously make our goods that we export, whatever we export, more competitive. The cost of freight out of Guyana is enormous, and sometimes it would affect everything, including our bauxite. And if we can ship bulk, the big ships can come in. You can cut the cost of freight by maybe 60%, which is a huge benefit to making your product more globally competitive. And then the import cost too, for containers coming here. If you have a huge vessel coming in here, you can significantly lower the cost of containers coming here. So we're thinking from this port too, if we have a port of that nature, instead of our goods going to Jamaica and staying there for sometimes 2 months to be transshipped to Guyana, and then some going to Trinidad, the containers, and coming here in smaller vessels. They can come directly here, and we could become a hub, maybe in a free trade area, a zone, to re-export the goods into the Caribbean, Suriname, Brazil, and probably even further out into other countries, so that we become it will become a major growth hub. We're looking at different growth hubs, and one of it was agriculture. So agriculture is a major growth hub of the future, and if you look at I don't want to outline all of the strategy, but it's a major it's reorienting agriculture to focus on higher levels of productivity and greater levels of global competitiveness, so it's more sustainable and more value added to the products. So that's the macro objectives, and it will happen in various sectors. So it's corn, it's soya, it's dairy, a number of other things that we are doing there. It's growing the large number of pigs, the bacon, and the bacon and sausages for export, all of that. On tourism, we believe that could become a major growth hub too. With the new hotels here in Georgetown, with eco lodges, and with our assets, we can package that as a major growth hub of the future. The oil and gas industry could become it's already a major growth hub. The next one is the connection to Brazil through the deepwater port will be major in the future. ICT, these are, I don't want to spend all this time talking about this, but this is what we've been planning a long time. You wouldn't hear APNO or AFC talk about this, and how the growth hubs of the future will create new income for our people. The new income, that's why we think that in another maybe 5 years or so, we'll be like, we'd have to get some serious labor from abroad, because we don't have enough of our people who hopefully would have been employed and getting better jobs and stuff like that they we'd have to bring in more people for the plans we have.
Thank you. And given the comments you've made about CGX and the possibility that their request may be denied, what in that case would happen to the port that they're constructing in Berbice? Would it just be stranded?
Well, the thing is that we have had some initial discussions with them on that, and so we'd have to find a way forward on that.
Okay. Do you see the government's capital budget expanding next year? When you think about the projects government wants to invest in next year, I'm trying to get an understanding of how the capital budget will evolve.
I think it's a little premature. So what will happen in the initial years, you would see a massive growth in the capital budget, not the recurrent budget. A lot of oil producing countries make the mistake where they grow their recurrent budget, and that is why if prices fall, they're stuck with the high cost and the loss of welfare. We have studied this carefully over the years, and that is why we are not making the mistakes that they're making. But at some point in time, when it would fall off steeply, and that's when we can start spending a bit more on the recurrent area. So more on wages for our teachers, our police, our nurses, public sector, more on our pensioners, etc. Because when you build the bridge across the Demerara River, it's built. In the future years, that comes out your budget. When the gas to energy project is built, it comes off your budget. When the road, when the 4-lane is built to Mahaika, it comes off your budget. And so these are big items that we are carrying now that will come off of our budget in the future, that will give us a bit more room to focus more on welfare and people's benefits and other things. But right now we need them. We need stable, cheap power. So we are making the investments now, but at some stage, you would see a peaking of the capital expenditure and then a steep decline once the big projects come off. Like, we have to fix our transmission mains now across this country to have a modern grid. The modern grid would be with fiber optic cable on these lines, so you can know when a blackout takes place in an individual home. You can remotely cut off a meter. You can do all sorts of things in a modern grid. And so that will take some money to fix, but you can't modernize this country without modernizing the grid. When we start getting major factories and massive number of hotels and stuff like that, the demand for power will skyrocket. You can't have blackouts all the time. If we don't focus on that today, the other side criticizes, but they don't focus on anything. They don't want us to even spend on it. They're saying we're spending too much on infrastructure. But they want reliable power, but we mustn't invest in the power plant. But you want reliable power. We mustn't invest in the grid, but they want reliable power.
See your capital budget expanding. I understand your
I don't, because it depends when we go through our PSIP. So right now, towards the end of the year, we'll go through with our PSIP. So we'd see how much of the existing year projects have to roll into next year. So what if we overspend this year? For example, a project moves forward faster than we had anticipated. That means we will overspend this year, but next year we'll spend less on it because it's completed earlier. If a project is delayed, it means that some of the expenditure from this year would roll into next year. So that means we'd have a higher rollover budget. So a lot of these things have to be determined when you're preparing them the last few months of the year when you're looking at the budget.
Okay, finally, I wanted to talk about, the offshore blocks. Recently, you had the request from Repsol to get a renewed Canuku license, which the government hasn't been definitive in giving that. Then you have CGX now with its license at an end. And over the next few years, going up to 2026, a lot of the current blocks are set to their license period expire. And
Yeah, so Exon has to, before the end of the year, give up 20% of its holding. So all of these would be with the government. And it's not going anywhere. There's no rush to do anything at this stage where we'd have to lower standards significantly so that you can get any interest in it. We believe that we have high quality assets and that once we complete, that's why we decided to take the route of doing seismic studies now on these offshore blocks. And then once we are fortified with the seismic studies, we believe we'll get better quality bids at the auctions. So we are not in any sprint. We're not in any sprint to give out all of the remaining blocks. And we made it clear that any block given out in future would have to be done through an auction or directly, but only if it involves another state partner.
Why I talked about those blocks is because you did talk about, the fact that we have the energy transition, and so there is a timer, and you want to keep the drilling momentum and stuff like that. So that's why I posed.
Yeah, sure.
These blocks are going to expire, and if you could also give an update on the block awards to those, the Exxon,
No
that group
progress
on the total
whatsoever.
level.
And when Vikram Bharat has his press conference, then you can ask him for details on every one of those. So you can go through each of those separately. But we need to make sure that we don't have, we believe the lack of seismic will not, we tested the market, first of all, without seismic, and you saw what the market yielded. So we have reconsidered it, and we now are going the route of doing seismic, so we can have better quality offers. We believe that that may even be speedier, and you'd still have work ongoing, although not work by an operator, work by the company that wins the bid to do the seismic. They would have work going on onshore, which would have had to be done in any case.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Schorfenberger of Kiteshore. Several months has passed since the 5 top-ranking officers were killed in a helicopter crash. In January, we heard that a black box was sent abroad. Can you tell us about the status of the investigation?
I have not followed that. You should ask the chief of staff for that.
A few weeks back, you said that the central bank...
Or civil aviation. I think civil aviation might be the best agency. They're tasked with dealing with that.
Yeah, Chief. A few weeks back, you said that the central bank intervened in the local dollar market, but there's still some concerns about the availability of the dollar and the price that is available. Some people saying it's reaching to 25 for one. Can you say the government will make any intervention again soon? Or
I made it clear that whenever the government feels that there's a need to, we have the capacity to intervene in the market, and we will do so. Whenever there is a need. Sometimes you have a lot of mismatch on currency too. So although the bank transfer rate might be lower, when people have to buy cash, because the central bank often doesn't deal with cash. So there's a shortage of cash in the market. So maybe we'd have to look at that. And I think what has happened too, with more of the gold being sold now to the gold board, a number of people were exporting the gold and selling the currency back in the market. So more and more the gold is being sold to the gold board now, as we tighten up with, the investigations we had with the Chinese ring that was smuggling gold, and some other investigations we've had, that you would have more of the gold being sold to the gold board. Now, when the gold board sells the gold, the foreign currency will go to the central bank. It will not go into the market directly. So the central bank now needs to put more of those resources back into the market that would have gone into the market if you had more private exporters of the gold. So I think that might be one of the issues that's taking place now. But I've not really looked in great detail at the market, so I'd have a look at that.
Thirdly, you have spoken in last press conference of the things that you've done for the oil sector, which is commendable. But in light of this, I want to ask, when will the Petroleum Commission be put in place?
I spoke about that already. I spoke about this in the past. It's like the same thing. I saw the point about interest. And last week, I knew you're going to put the headline, Jagdeo doesn't know the interest rate that Exxon is charging. Now, how many times do we have to give the same explanation? So, on the interest matter, do you recall what we said? Do you recall that no interest is charged to the cost bank? There's zero interest charged to the cost bank. That the company has been funding its operation from equity and from money that it does not repatriate to the parent, its earning that it doesn't repatriate to its parent company. So although the PSA provides for interest to be charged to the cost bank, in this case, they are funding their operations basically from two sources. So there is no interest charged to the cost bank. We explained that 100 times. So why would Kaichor News not understand that? What interest? And we made it clear that even when they lease from like the FPSOs, they lease the FPSOs. So the FPSOs, the companies that build the FPSOs may borrow, but their interest on their loan to build the FPSO is reflected in the leasing cost until the equipment is fully paid for, and then it gets transferred to the company, the local company. So how many times do we explain this? On the Petroleum Commission, I've explained that there's no magic with a Petroleum Commission. You think under the PNC, with their proclivity to intervene and subjugate technical bodies, if they could subjugate a GCOM or the Army, I spoke of that earlier. You think a Petroleum Commission, they would put a Vincent Henry on the Petroleum Commission. A Vincent Henry or Vincent Adams. He is a great technical man, although he is a politician. Like how they put their executive member on the PPC and then say, oh, it acts independently. It's a sham. It's a sham. They would have intervened there. They have no decent, there's no magic. We have given our agencies the tool to manage the sector and better. And that is why we have a petroleum activities bill that replaces the one from 1986. For Christ's sake, you know what it took to get that in place? The hard work that it took to get that in place. They could have done it in the 5 years they're there. They did nothing. We did it in a record time. And now we've expanded its scope to modern law now from 1986. That's what they had for the 5 years they've been in office. That's what they were using. You know what I took? Look at the tools available there. The same thing about decommissioning costs. It's now reflected and how it has to be accounted for in that act. When I went to Ghana, the people said, a lot of people said it's too ambitious to get the local content law. We couldn't move it for years. People were opposed to it. We passed it. Look at the impact it has had on our people and the building industry here and everything else. and Guyanese getting jobs now. Look at that. That's what they're not focused on. They would never want to focus on, oh, why isn't the PPP passing a Petroleum Commission? As though if we pass a Petroleum Commission tomorrow and put, let me see who, Kwame McCoy to head the Petroleum Commission, or another member of the executive of the party, to like what they're doing on the AFC. They'd put Vincent Adams to head the EPA. And he was the same one who signed off on all these mediocre environmental permits, and today he has a lot to speak about. So they'll put somebody like that. What do you think will happen? It's the same commission, same political. Would Kaichur then stop criticizing us? The answer would be no. There's nothing magical about this. There's nothing magical. So I hope I gave you my answers again. This is the last time I'm coming back to those two questions.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Finally, and you had responded to my colleague's question, and I can recall that a period back you said that you would have made an interview public where you said that your government will not renegotiate.
I can get the clips from my press conference. I will get it. It's a clip from my press conferences.
Okay.
I can get that. Yeah. In the past, go and research it. Research it. Too, you should research. You can find all these things. If you research Glenlal, you would find some things you don't want to find out about. But that's what media people should do. All right, go ahead. Yeah. Thank you very much.